श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। वक्रतुण्डमहाकाय सूर्यकोटिसमप्रभा निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। ॐ आप्यायन्तु मम अङ्गानि वाक्प्राणश्चक्षुश्रोत्रमतो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि। सर्वं ब्रह्मोपनिषदं माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्याम्। मा ब्रह्म निराकरोत्। अनिराकरणमस्त्वनिराकरणं मे अस्तु। तदात्मनि निरतेय उपनिषत्सु धर्मास्ते मयि सन्तु ते मयि सन्तु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Namaste friends. Team Param Vedanta welcomes you all for the session 2 of selected verses from different Upanishads. Last class, we have studied few verses from Isha Vasya and Kaivalya Upanishads. Today, we are studying some of the important and selected verses from Taittiriya, Kena, and Chandogya Upanishads. Our today's speakers are Dr. Netra, Dr. Ravishankar, Dr. Anupama, and Dr. Hegde sir. As usual, our Hegde sir will give us the deeper inputs. Over to you, Hegde sir.
Sadashivasamarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Today we will see 3 Upanishads. Very briefly, of course. The whole objective is to be able to kindle our interest in those most wonderful texts that we have an opportunity to study once upon a time, although very briefly. Hopefully someday we will study in detail. The 3 Upanishads are Kena Upanishad, Taittiriya Upanishad, and the Chandogya Upanishad. We begin with the Kena Upanishad. Both the Kena Upanishad and the Chandogya Upanishad come from the Samaveda. And the first word in the Kena Upanishad, Keneshitam, and that's how the Upanishad has been named. There are few other Upanishads which are named after the first word. For example, in the Taittiriya Upanishad has got 3 chapters. The first chapter is called Shiksha Valli. It begins with the word Shiksha. The second chapter is Brahmananda Valli, which begins with Brahmavid Apnoti Param. And the third chapter is called Brigu Valli, which begins with the word Brigu. Thanks, Radha, for a very excellent rendering of this Shanti Pata. And this Shanti Pata, all of us should learn this mantra, should learn how to chant this mantra, and hopefully make this mantra a regular prayer, because these Shanti Patas are very loaded in content. It is the common Shanti Pata for all Upanishads from the Samaveda. And the 2 principal Upanishads, and both of them we will have a glimpse today, are the Chandogya and the Kena Upanishad. So, what is this Shanti Pata primarily asking for? So, 2 things. It is a prayer. This prayer is asking for, can I have an excellent body-mind so that I have all the health? Now, when we are entering into a major project of Brahma Vidya, your body-mind should be in a good condition. Not only that, Brahma Vidya, like climbing the Everest, you require a certain amount of eligibility. Can I have all that eligibility? And finally, let me have a guru and the grace to know Brahman. Apyayantu mama angani. Apyayantu means mama angani, may my limbs grow. And my limbs include my speech, my prana, my sight, my hearing. So let this body be a fit instrument. And then I want to know about Brahman, that Brahman which is known in the Upanishads. Brahman is always available. We will study in the Kena Upanishad. When you open your eyes, you see so many things. Are we seeing the object? In Kenopanishad, the whole message is Pratibodha Viditam Mata. In every experience, am I in touch with the experiencer, the subject? And therefore, let in every experience, let me be in touch with Brahman. Let me have all the prerequisite qualifications. Let me of one who is committed to study Brahma Vidya. That is the beauty Shanti Pata. The opening Upanishad for today is Keno Upanishad. Swami Anubhavananda calls this the sugar Keno Upanishad because it is so sweet. Swami Paramarthananda, he says
ಅಲ್ಲೇ ನೋಡ್ದೆ ನಾನು
it is a small Upanishad. Although it is a small Upanishad, it is a very powerful Upanishad. The power of the Upanishad is that it is like a small chili. Personally, for me, it is this Upanishad that has opened my eyes to a proper understanding of Brahma Vidya. Brahman is never something that can be objectified. It is the very subject. This understanding becomes very clear. Those who have studied this Upanishad and those who have some idea of neurology, you will be certain about one thing. The question in both in neurology and in this Upanishad is the same. The student comes to the teacher and says, Bhagavan, my Lord, I'm able to see. I'm able to hear. I'm able to speak. I'm able to think. What is that life force which makes all this happen? And in medical science, we know how we see, how exactly the processing happens in the mind. And the more we study the human body, we understand the body is a wonderful instrument. It is the eyes are like video cameras and the brain is like a supercomputer. And perhaps no computer that has been created has such a wonderful parallel processing that the human mind can do. And yet, we need to know that when you have a computer, it requires somebody, some X factor, who is the one who is going to use this computer. Who is that X? That is what is the question. That is why where neurology ends, the Kenopanishad begins. To understand this opening verse, Shrotyasya Shrotam Manaso Manoyat, what is that which makes me able to hear, makes me able to see, makes me able to speak? And this will be explained by none other than a professor of neurology from the great National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, Dr. Netra. Dr. Netra, please.
Namaste, Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. The Kena Upanishad belongs to Samaveda. It's in prose form, so it is called Mantra Upanishad. It has 4 chapters. The first word starts with the name Kena. The first mantra begins with the word Kena Ishatam Patati. Hence, this Upanishad is called Kena Upanishad. The Upanishad begins with a Shanti mantra and then a question coming from an informed, intelligent student. Sishya has understood that this body is alive, sentient. Body is made up of material and cannot be naturally sentient. Therefore, in the body, there must be some other principle to make the body alive and sentient. Like the fan cannot naturally move, there must be some principle other than the fan, which is an invisible principle. Fan is visible, but behind it, there is an invisible principle which makes the fan rotate. Thus, the question is, how can a naturally inert body, mind appear sentient? It must be blessed by some invisible principle by which the body gets borrowed consciousness. This the student names Deva. Essentially, the question is, what is consciousness or what is Atma? The answer begins with this verse, Shrotasya Shrotam Manaso Manoyat Vachoha Vachamsa U Pranasya Pranaha Chakshusha Chakshuramutyucha Dhiraha Pretya Smalokadam Mruta Bhavanti. The teacher replied, "It is the eye of the eye, the mind of the mind, the speech of the speech, the life of the life, and the ear of the ear, separating the self from the senses and renouncing the world. The wise one realizes his or her immortal nature." Next, this is the key verse or the foundation verse of the Kena Upanishad. Just like the key verses in Bhagavad Gita, Ashochanan Vasho, the wise does not grieve. This is considered the Gita Sara, the essence. Similarly, this verse is the essence of the Kena Upanishad. On a Paurnami night, moon is bright. I know that the moon does not have natural light, but moon is bright now. But it does not have natural light. Therefore, what is the conclusion? It must have borrowed light. Similarly, body must be borrowing Chaitanyam from some other source. Through this mantra, the teacher wants us to say that Atma is that principle or Deva which the student is looking for. That principle is called Atma, Chaitanyam. Previously, we have learned that Atma, the consciousness, is not a part or property of the body or product of the body. It's an independent entity which pervades and enlives the body, not limited by the boundaries of the body, will continue to exist after the body medium collapses. Consciousness cannot have any transactions once the medium of transaction collapses. This is very well explained by the example of the light and the hand illumined by light. So the teacher defines the Atma, self, as it is the eye of the eye, mind of the mind, speech of the speech, life of the life, and ear of the ear. So when the teacher says ear of the ear, and so on, he is directing our attention to the consciousness principle. Why does a teacher choose to use such a language? There are several reasons for communicating in this manner. So when you say it is the ear of the ear, you're communicating the idea that there are two distinct things. It is something distinct from the ear. Suppose you say this is the house of Ram. The moment you hear of, you understand that the house and Rama are two different entities and they have some relationship. But the important thing is that they are two different entities. So by saying that Atma is the ear of the ear, the teacher has communicated that Atma is that consciousness which is distinct from the ear, and at the same time it pervades the ear, just like the light example. More importantly, consciousness is called ear of the ear because it is due to consciousness alone that the ear can function. The ear is an ear because of its hearing power. It has its hearing power because of the sentiency, and the sentiency is because of the Atma. Similarly, eye is an eye only when it has the seeing power. The I-ness of the eye is only because of the consciousness linked by that Atma. So now we understand the teacher is defining Atma in this verse as that which is different from every organ but pervades every organ, and because of which alone every organ functions as an organ. And that principle is consciousness, which is that Deva the student is looking for. Even here, the teacher is worried. In the teacher's mind, you means the consciousness principle, but in the student's mind, you refers to the body mind complex. So the teacher has to find some method by which the student should understand that I am the principle, I am the consciousness other than my organs. So the Atma consciousness is within me that pervades the body and renders sentiency to the body. Then the teacher discusses the benefit of this knowledge. Veeraha adimuchyata. Veera means a qualified sadhana chatushtaya sampanna adhikari. The wise jnani or discriminative people transcends the body mind. When the jnani use the word I, they take only the consciousness as themselves. They don't confuse the body mind with the I. In the case of a non-discriminative ajnani, the word I is used for both the consciousness and the body mind. Therefore, the Upanishad says, Dhiraha Adimuchya means transcending. The wise one transcends. What a discriminative person means by the word I is just the consciousness aspect. He ignores the body mind aspect and takes only the consciousness aspect alone as his identity. This transcending is not a physical action, it's not a physical event, it's an intellectual event. So, this intellectual segregation is called transcendence. So when an Agnani uses the word I, he is including the body mind along the consciousness. It is the primary meaning of the word I, Vajyata. However, when Jnani uses the word I, the Self excludes the body mind complex, and this is called implied meaning, Lakshartha. The Vachartha self is mortal, but the Lakshartha self is immortal. Therefore, the teacher says the wise man transcends. This is called Jivan Mukti. So, what is the phalam? The first is he learns to drop ahankara and mamakara in the material world. Dropping ahankara, mamakara to my relatives, my possession, my body mind complex is internal sannyasa. And the indication of the internal sannyasa is by the FIR principle with regards to anxiety, fear. This is equanimity of the mind, the triple C's, calm, cheerful, confident of facing the future. This person enjoys Jivan Mukti. No ragadvesha with regards to life nor death. So, how long does this Jivan Mukti continue? It will continue as long as the prarabdha oil continues, as long as the flame of life burns. And when the prarabdha oil gets exhausted, the flame of light is extinguished, asman lokat kritya. And after death, sanchita is burned by knowledge, agami does not come at all for a jnani, and prarabdha is exhausted. All these karmas are gone. After death, these jnanis are amritaha bhavanti. They are one with the all-pervading Brahman. There is no punarjanma. All the three shariram merge into three prapancha. The Vishwa merges into Virat, Taijasa merges into Hiranyagarbha, Prajna merges into Ishvara. It is like the iceberg melting in the sunlight and merging into the ocean. The Jiva iceberg melts in the light of Jivan Surya and merges into Paramatma Sagara, Amrutaha Bhavanti, or they become one with Paramatma. This is Videha Mukti. This is the phalam Jivan Mukti and Videha Mukti. So, in conclusion, this verse is an important key verse that has discussed important four topics: Atma Swarupa, Atma Jnana, Atma Jnana Phalam number one, that is Jivan Mukta, and Atma Jnana Phalam number two is Videha Mukti. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Netra, for a very nice explanation of how the Kenopanishad is able to tell us who is that factor. Who normally we say somebody called Brahman or Atma. Who is this Atma? And the Upanishad continues. And that is why you will see the greatness of this Upanishad. And the Upanishad has now makes it very clear about, once we know that there is an enlivening factor, the next question is, how do I know that? I want to know that. I want to see. I want to hear. And then the Upanishad in a string of verses goes like this. Yad vacha anubhutitam yena vak abhiyutyate tadeva brahmatvam viddhi na edam yaditam upasate. Now this is a frightening mantra for an upasaka. An upasaka means all of us who have been trained to worship God in our prayer room, wait in line for a temple to have a small glimpse of the Lord. Upasate, that I go so far and wait to see a glimpse of the Lord. This Upanishad says very clearly, and that is the message of all the Upanishads, that is not Brahman. Brahman is not something that you can see. It is not something that you can hear. But it is that principle because of which you will be able to see, and that principle because of which you are able to speak, and not that which you worship in the temple. Because Brahman is not an object of experience. It is the very subject. The whole Upanishad tries to help and tell us that our whole body mind is only an instrument. Whenever you use an instrument, the instrument such becomes an integral part of you. For example, I'm using my spectacles. And if somebody asks me how many objects can you see, we forget to count your spectacles as an object because it becomes an integral part of me. Now, the whole of Vedanta is trying to tell us that the body-mind is only an instrument. And the Atma, or the conscious principle, which is the enlivening principle, is the intelligent one who is behind. In this picture, you see a microscope. The microscope is only an instrument. An instrument of knowledge is called Brahmanam. And the pramanam includes my body-mind. My body-mind is an instrument from which I get to know. So the body-mind is a pramanam. The object that I see, I can see the world around, including with my eyes, I can see my own body, I can infer on my own mind. So what is that object that I see is called prameyam. The seer is called a pramata. Now the atma or the seer can never be an object, and therefore it is called aprameya. Get these terms very clear. The instrument is pramanam. The knower through the instrument is both, either Atma or Pramata. The object of my experience is the Prameyam, and the real seer or the Atma is never an object of experience. It is always the subject. It is called Aprameya. Now, if I cannot see the Atma, if I cannot hear the Atma, if I cannot feel the Atma, what is the proof of the existence of Atma? Just like whenever you take a photograph, the camera is not seen, but every picture that you take is the proof of the existence of the camera. I see so many objects because my eyes are functioning. Although I don't see my own eyes, the fact that I'm able to see is proof of my eyes. All knowledge, pratibodha viditam matam. In every experience, the Atma is evident. Pratibodha viditam matam. And that is the key word here. And therefore, this is exactly what Sri Krishna speaks in the 13th chapter, the ultimate knower, where Sri Krishna calls as himself the consciousness principle, Kshetrajnam, the knower of the field of experiences. Cha api mam vidhi. Please know that Sarva Kshetreshu Bharata. In every experience, the experiencer is the same. It may be that from different bodies we are seeing, but that conscious principle which is enveloping your body and my body and Sri Krishna's body are one and the same. Now, Sri Krishna goes on to answer, and this is the important derivation from this Upanishad, Kshetra Kshetrajnor Jnanam, that distinction between the field of experience and the knower of the field. Now, yet tat jnanam matam mama, in my opinion, that is the real knowledge. The Upanishad continues and says, na tatra chakshur gacchati na vagacchati no manaha. That Atma cannot be seen by the eyes, cannot be described by my speech, cannot be known by the mind. And then there is a problem. It is not something that I know as an object. And therefore, I really do not know how to teach. Now, remember, here is a student who's come to the teacher, and the teacher is saying, I really do not know how to teach. So, all this is being done because the student should not try to objectify or to make the Atma an object. So when the truth cannot be seen by the eyes, it is beyond the scope of all the Jnanendriyas. It cannot be expressed by my speech or mind. It is beyond the Karmendriya. So the teacher says, we do not know, we do not understand, we do not know how to teach this. Now the student is shocked. And the teacher conveys, Anya deva tat viditat ato aviditat iti. It is something other than the known and the unknown. Now, this is a very important factor. Atma is not something that can be known. It is not something that is unknown. Even though this is the problem as far as knowing the Atma, the teacher gives a very reassuring word and says, Iti shushruma purvesham. Now, my teachers and my ancestors have developed a very peculiar method of teaching. They have taught me. I have got this Brahma Vidya. I will use the same methodology and help you to get Brahma Vidya. Now, this is the methodology that goes on. So the teacher says it is not something that is known or unknown. Why? It is the knower. The knower can never be an object of knowledge. And all our experiences, all our knowledge is objective knowledge. And this is about the knowledge of the subject. Now, the teacher then defines what is this self-realization or Atma realization or Brahma Jnana. Self-realization or Atma Jnanam is the knowledge that the Atma uh, need not be realized because the Atma is evident in and through every experience. The word to be remembered is Pratibodha Viditam Mata. In every experience, you can experience the silence. I'm not speaking a single word, and yet you know that he is not speaking a single word. Who is the one who is aware of the sound? Who's the one who is aware of the silence? The sound is there, but there is a listener that is here. Now we have to shift our attention from the object to the subject, and this is called Atmajnanam. Now, there are two terms which we need to remember. One is called the pramata and one is called the atma. Now, when the consciousness is functioning through the instrument of the body-mind, and when the body-mind is functioning, that is when I am awake, I have a limited experience of the field of the world around me. And when I have this limited experience of the world around me, I become a pramata. When the mind is not functioning, I know that I have no experience, but I am aware of everything, and that is being pure consciousness. So now, where do we continue from this knowledge? We need to say that Brahman is never a matter of experience. It is to be able to claim that experiencer I am. So the first stage is I, that knower, is Brahman. And the final stage is to say that I, the consciousness, is Brahman. And what is the benefit of this knowledge? How does this make you free? Now, as body-mind, I am mortal. But as Atma, I have been there from the very beginning. You remember the verse, Na jayate, because I am not even born. Na mriyate va kadachit. Nayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuha ajaha nityaha sashvataha puranaha na hanyate hanyamane sharire. And this is the understanding. Then the teacher goes on to explain. Now, the second chapter is called a Mananam chapter, where the teacher asks, I have taught you Brahma Vidya. Now, do you know Brahman? Now, here is a catch question. If the student says, I know Brahman, then it becomes a problem because he has made Brahman as object. And if he says, I do not know Brahman, then what is the point of my teaching? So the two students says, I know, I do not know, I know that I do not know. And he says, all of us who understood my statement are the knowers of Brahman. Essentially, the student is, for a tricky question, he gives a tricky answer and he's trying to say, I know I am that, I am Brahman, and Brahman cannot be something that can be known as an object because it is the very subject. And finally, the Upanishad ends by giving you this Mahavakya mantra, Pratibodha Viditam Matam. If you want immortality in every experience, come in touch with the experience. And so Brahman is not known by any particular experience. Brahman is discerned by the consciousness in and through every experience. Experiences come and go. What is unchanging is the conscious observer who's aware of the silence, who's aware of the sound. We are studying scriptures not to experience Brahman, but we are studying to know that consciousness I am. So these are the peculiar way of teaching because there are two kinds of words of introduction and words of description. For example, if I can describe Manasarovar or Kailash based on a past visit. Now, these are words of description. And when you get a words of description, there is a desire that one day I can go and see Manasarovar or Kailash. Then there are words of introduction. I have experienced something all the time. I have experienced this consciousness, but I do not know that experience in me, that is Brahman. And when the teacher introduces in such a way, there is no more a desire to experience because I've always known myself, but I have never known that that conscious principle in me is what I should know and claim as I am that. And finally, the second chapter concludes in this way, that in this life, if one gets this knowledge, then your life becomes worthwhile. But if in this life, if you do not get this knowledge, it is a tremendous loss. You have missed the glory of being a human being. Of course, the Upanishad feels, and this is very difficult. This is for the Uttamadhikari, and for the Madhyamadhikari, there is a very beautiful story, and for the Adhamadhikari. So the third chapter is a beautiful story, and in the fourth chapter are the various sadhanas for the less qualified person to get all the qualifications required. One day we will study this beautiful Sugarcane Upanishad. Dr. Ravi Shankar will now speak about this beautiful word from the Taittiriya Upanishad, Shikshavalli. Dr. Ravi Shankar, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Yes, Chandasam, as we dwell into this beautiful Shanti mantra, may I take the liberty of highlighting Vrishabha and Om. Vrishabha is anything that is the best, the most eminent of its class. On a side note, in the Shraddha rites, the laws of transmigration, Vrishabha plays a major role. Now we move to Om. In the next slide, we notice. In the next slide, we see some examples where Om has been highlighted. In the Mandukya, Om ittedaksharam idam sarvam. Om is in all the states of time. It's in all the levels of consciousness that we have, and it is the etymological knowledge, which is the origin of the words. Bhutam bhavat bhavishyaditi sarvam omkaram eva. And that is the highlight of Om in the Mandukya. In the next slide, we notice that in the Mandukya Karika, Soyam Atma, Omkara has been further explained as Omkaro Dhimatram Pada Matra Matrascha Pada Akara Ukara Makara Iti. So there's a further highlight, and this is what we are going to read in the classes to come, as our teacher has told us. In the next slide, we notice that in the Mundaka, Pranavo Dhanuhu Sharo Atma Brahma Talakshanamujjate. Atma has been explained as the arrow. Om is the bow. And with that Om, the arrow hits the Brahman. In the next slide, the Kathopanishad very clearly tells us, Etadyevaksharam Brahma, Etadyevaksharam Param, and moves on to say that Yad Jnatva Yo Yadichati Tasya Tat. Also in Etadalambanam Shrestha, Etadalambanam Param, Yad Jnatva Brahmaloke Mahiyate. So knowing Omkar is as good, is so important. There's nothing more important than knowing Om. In the next slide, we see that Bhagwan Shankaracharya says that this word Om indeed is Brahman. And this is the highest. And there's no other substitute. This word is a substitute for Brahman. So whoever worships this word Om also worships Brahman. And you get both the manifest and the unmanifest. In the next slide, we notice that in the 8th chapter, Om ityetaksharam brahma tyadeham sayati paramam gatim. Remember Omkara at the time of leaving this sthula sharira, and it is paramam gatim. In the next slide, we again understand in the 17th chapter, the 23rd verse, Om Tatsaditi. So everywhere there are so many times that Omkara has been highlighted. Chandogya, it's very important. Om Ittedaksharam. And this important Om here is the closest word to Brahman. He says, recite this Om as if you are worshipping Brahman. treat this Om as a symbol of Brahman. Concentrate on the idea of this oneness. Om iti hridyak gacchati tasyopyakhyanam. In the next slide, even in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, Tasya Vachakah Pranavaha, in the first chapter, Samadhipada. Ishwar or the Lord, if there is a name, it is Pranava Arthat Omkara itself. And as we move on to the next slide, we also notice that Omkar is the only Satnam. That's the only one Ik Omkar Satnam in the as the sixth mention. So why is all this important? Because in the Kathopanishad, there is a prerequisite, and it is a very fine perception that we need to understand. Esha sarveshu bhuteshu gudatma na prakashate drishyate tvagraya buddhaya sukshmaya sukshmadarshibhihi. This self is hidden in all of us. It doesn't come forth, it doesn't shine forth, but it is the subtle seer who has one pointedness and subtle intellects who is able to clearly understand Omkara and hence Brahman. That's a prerequisite, that subtle mind. We move on to this beautiful Shikshavali of Taittiriya Aranyakam, fourth Prapatakaha, and the Shanti mantra, which is very important to get that subtleness of the intellect. The mantra is Om Yas Chandasam Vrishabho Vishwarupaha Chandobhyo Namritaam Sambhabhuva Samendro Medhaya Aspranotu Amratasya Deva Dharano Bhuyasam Shariram Me Vicharshanam Jihva Me Madhumattama Karna Abhyam Bhuri Vishruvam Brahmana Koshosi Medhaya Pihitaha Shrutam Me Gopaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. In the next slide, we understand that the meaning of this Shanti Patha, Shanti Mantra is May He the Lord of all, which is in the form of Rishabha, the most eminent, the preeminent among the Vedas, and the most superior nectar. Let him bless me with wisdom. May I be adorned with that knowledge of Brahman, and that knowledge leads to immortality. May my understanding of this knowledge make my body strong and let it be vigorous. May my tongue utter the most delightful words. Let there be Vak Shuddhi. May I hear this again and again and again with my ears. Let my ears not hear anything other than Omkara and Brahman. Thou art the scabbard, we'll understand that little later, of Brahman, hidden by the worldly taints. May I never forget what I have learnt. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. In the next slide, this mantra, Swami Paramarthanandaji has told that it is meant for Jnana Yogyata Prapti. Unlike the Homa Sadhana, this is a Upasana. It is a Manasika Pradhana Upasana, where there is a prayer to this formless God. We know it's difficult to have a prayer to a formless God. So you need a symbol, an alambanam, and that is Omkara. Like a surgeon wants to know whether his patient is fit for surgery, this is a prayer for fitness to get this Jnana Yogyata Prapti. In the next slide, as we sit and want to do prayers, we say, Atha Manta Pujam Karishye, Atha Pita Pujam Karishye, before you invoke the Lord. So Mantapa and Pita clearly give us an idea of the Lord sitting there. So you have to glorify the Mantapa and Pita before you glorify Ishvara. Similarly, you glorify Omkara before you invoke Ishvara. Pihitam is very important. So Brahmaji himself has extracted the Omkara mantra from the Vedas and given it to us, and therefore this Omkara is the Vrishabha amongst all the mantras. It is the greatest among the Vedas. In the next slide. Yes, Chandasam. Chandayati means something that gives us a lot of happiness. prinayati iti chandaha. And it also gives us protection, rakshayati. From what? This Veda mantra protects you from samsara. If you look at the scabbard, the pihita, you get an idea of the size and the shape of the sword within. Exactly the same way, if you understand Omkara, by chanting this Shanti mantra, you get an understanding of Brahman. Shri Guru Bhyo Namah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ravi Shankar, for giving a wonderful thesis outline of the great Omkara and the beautiful chanting of this beautiful mantra, Yes Chandasam. I enjoy every time your chanting of this Yes Chandasam Rishabhav Vishwaveda. Now we have come to another Upanishad, that is the Taittiriya Upanishad. Shankaracharya has commented on the 7th, 8th, and the 9th chapters, and because he has not touched the 10th chapter, there is a very beautiful Upanishad called the Mahanarayana Upanishad. And the Mahanarayana Upanishad has got many, many quotable verses. Whenever we receive a Swamiji, na karmana, na prajaya, and then Vedanta, Vijnana, Sunishtitartha, all those mantras come in the Mahanarayana Upanishad, and it's extremely musical and beautiful. And for whatever reasons, Adi Shankara has not commented on it. We don't generally study that Upanishad. But the 7th, 8th, and the 9th chapters of the Taittiriya Anuvaka is the Taittiriya Upanishad. So the three components are Shikshavalli, Brahmavalli, and Bhriguvalli. And this mantra, which Dr. Ravi Shankar just explained, comes from the Shikshavalli. Shankaracharya's Bhashyam of the Taittiriya Upanishad is considered his most brilliant. And there he has described, this is an Upanishad in which freedom or moksha is kept. It is hidden. It is available for you. The second chapter begins with a great mantra, Om Brahmavid Apnoti Param. And this will be explained to us by Dr. Anupama. Dr. Anupama, please.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Taittiriya Upanishad, Brahmananda Valli, Anuvaka 1. Brahmavit apnoti param, tad esha abhyukta. This is, in this regard, the following Rig mantra is being quoted. Satyam jnanam anantam brahma, yo veda nihitam guhayam parame vyoman, soshnute sarvan kaman saha, brahmana vipaschita iti. The Sutra Vakyam Brahmavit apnoti param. Here Brahmavit means the knower of Brahman, Vit being the Jnani, apnoti means attains, and param means parama purushartha or moksha, purnatvam. That means Brahma Jnani attains param Brahma. The knower of Nirguna Brahman is Nirguna Brahman. How is this so? Is the knower of a donkey? Certainly not. Therefore, to understand Brahmavit apnoti param, we should know what is Brahman. Kim tat Brahma? How can I know Brahman? Katam tasya vedanam? And what is meant by moksha? Ka paraprapti? A vritti or a brief commentary on this Sutra Vakyam answers these three questions by quoting a Rig mantra. What is Brahman? Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma. How is Brahman known? Yo Veda Nihitam Guhayam, Parame Vyoman. What is meant by moksha prapti? Soshnute Sarvan Kaman Saha, Brahmana Vipaschita iti. Let us now understand these four words, Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma. The meaning of Brahman is big, infinitely and unconditionally. And this Brahman has been defined by three words, Satyam, Jnanam, and Anantam. Anantam means unantam or without limitation. Limitation could be spatial, temporal, or attribute-wise. Desha Kala Vastu Parichedana. Brahman is Desha Kala Vastu Parichedana Rahitam. Being Desha Parichedana Rahitam, it is Sarvagatam. Being Kala Parichedana Rahitam, it is Nityam. And being Vastu Parichedana Rahitam, there is no second. It is Advitiyam. Therefore, Brahman is Sarvagatam, Nityam, Advitiyam, in one word, Anantam. What is the meaning of Satyam? The primary meaning or Mukhyartha is any existent object, the entire Jagrat Prapancha. The problem being, every experienced object is limited by Desha Kala Vastu Parichedana. And we have just defined Brahman as Anantam. So we take the secondary meaning by Bhaga Tyaga Lakshana, meaning drop Nama Rupa. For example, when I say I have eaten a banana, it is understood that the peel is excluded. Primary meaning being whole banana, not relevant. The secondary meaning is peeled banana, which becomes relevant. So any object in this universe has three aspects: the Nama, the Rupa, and the Satta. So Brahman has been defined as Anantam. So we have to exclude the Nama and Rupa. For example, an apple is red, a star is bright, a flower is fragrant. The non-variable and limitless aspect is the isness, the pure existence or Satta. Retain the Satta and drop the Nama Rupa. This Satta pervades all the Namas and Rupas. Therefore, Satta is Anantam. Satta is Nama Rupa Rahita Satyam. It's not a part, product, property of the object, etc. It is just pure existence. Anantam Satyam Brahma. We now have to understand Jnanam. Jnanam means knowledge. This is the primary meaning. It could be knowledge of any object. Now, this is limited, we know, because physics knowledge excludes chemistry knowledge. There is Desha Kala Vastu Parichedana. Knowledge exists as a thought, a vritti in the mind. We have to arrive at Ananta Jnanam by taking the secondary meaning, again by Bhaga Tyaga Lakshana. First, let's find out the constituents of knowledge. There is Nama, for example, a pot, Rupa, its form, and importantly, the awareness or chit, the consciousness which makes us aware of the pot. The Nama and Rupa form a pot vritti, and this is the limited aspect of knowledge. To adapt to the definition of Brahman as Anantam, we have to drop the Nama Rupa and take the chit, which is consistent in every knowledge. Vritti Bhava, Abhava, Sakshi Chaitanyam is Anantam. This is here called Vipaschita or omniscient, Sarva Prakashakam, Prati Bodha Viditam Matam. Therefore, we now understand Brahman as Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, the limitless existence consciousness. Moving on, how do we know Brahman? Yo Veda Nihitam Guhayam Parame Vyoman. Brahman has to be recognized in one's mind. Guhayam Nihitam means accessible in the mind. And where is the mind located? The subtle mind is located in the physical heart, the inner space of the heart called Parame Vyoman, the sanctum sanctorum. We have seen this before in the Bhagavad Gita, Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hriddeshe Junatishtati, in the Mundaka, Manomaya Prana Sharira Netha Pratishtita Anne Hridayam Sannidhana, and in Kathopanishad, Angushta Matra Purusha Antaratma Sada Jananam Hridaya Sannivishtaha. How can I know that Brahman in my mind? Know that Brahman as I the subject and never the object, ever the experiencer, never the experienced. Negate everything we experience, the Jagat, the body-mind complex, negate all attributes. And what remains is the observer. I, the witness, am Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Iti Veda. Finally, what is the meaning of attaining Purnatvam? Brahmavit Agnoti Param means Paraprapti. Saha Ashnute Sarvan Kaman Saha. Here, Sa is the Brahma Jnani, the one who knows Brahman as Aham Brahma Asmi. And Ashnute means attains. Sarvan Kaman means the Vishayananda, the Anatma Sukha in its entirety, and how simultaneously Saha. That's surprising. So we should know the difference between Vishayananda and Brahmananda. Vishayananda is always a decimal trickle, whereas Brahmananda is an infinite source. Vishayananda is finite Purnatvam and it's only transient. If this man has had a full meal, and then if he's offered his favorite dish, this is what he would do. Why? Out of a temporary vairagyam for more food, out of a sense of momentary Purnatvam or Vishayananda, and it will not be long before his craving starts all over again. The infinite Purnatvam is Brahmananda. Here, Brahmana means Brahma Ananda Rupena Sarvan Vishayananda Prapnoti. Brahmananda is infinite Ananda, which encompasses all finite Ananda. And what is the proof? The Brahma Jnani is an embodiment of Tripti, Purnatvam, Santushti. This is Paraprapti. In the words of Lord Krishna, Prajahati yata kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanyevatmana tushta sthita pragnyastadochyate. Desire for Vishayananda vanishes. This vairagyam towards finite pleasures is an indication of Purna Ananda Prapti or Sarva Kama Nivritti. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anupama, for a very nice explanation of this mantra. Om Brahmavid Apnoti Para. Now, this is an answer to the question, why do we study Brahmavidya? The answer is given already. Brahmavid, the one who knows Brahman, achieves the highest. In the Manisha Panchakam, there is a verse, don't call a knower of Brahman as Brahmavid. It is wrong to say a knower of Brahmavid. Why? Brahmaiva Bhavati. In the Mundaka also there is a verse that says, the knower of Brahman does not become a Brahmavid, but becomes Brahma himself. All of us are ignorant of our true nature. We are going around with begging bowls, thinking that we are so ordinary, we are limited beings, forgetting that we are already that. And it is this Upanishad that takes away the ignorance and tells us, Brahmavid, Brahmaiva Bhavati. You become Brahman himself. Now, this mantra has been nicely explained as the definition of Brahman. Brahman is Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam. Or in other words, it is limitless existence, limitless consciousness. And you should know this limitless existence and consciousness where? In the cave of your heart. And what happens when you have that? All your desires are fulfilled. Just like Sri Krishna answers, who is the Sthita Prajna? Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogata. Once you know who you are, so shnute sarvan kaman saha brahmana vipaschite iti. Now we come to another Upanishad. And this Upanishad is the Chandogya Upanishad. The Chandogya comes from the Samaveda. The Chandogya Upanishad is the longest in the sense it has got 627 mantras, even more number of mantras than the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. The Brihad means big, forest, Aranyaka. But because the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, although the number of mantras are 400 odd, each of those mantras are very long mantras compared to the Chandogya Upanishad. And therefore, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad will become the biggest Upanishad that we have to study. This Upanishad, Chandogya, has got 8 chapters. Dr. Ravi Shankar has already described when he began, yes, Chandasam. Chandas means it's a Vedic meter. It also means that which gives us happiness. Normally, Swamiji teaches only the 6th and the 7th and the 8th chapter of the Chandogya Upanishad, and he makes a brief summary of the other chapters because 1 to 5 deal with a lot of karma and upasana. It looks more like Veda Purva rather than Veda Anta. The 6th chapter is called Sadvidya, brilliant chapter. We need to study that someday because it tells us to know how Brahman is in the form of existence. Today, I will give you a glimpse of Bhuma Vidya, the 7th chapter. And then the 8th chapter is also called Prajapati Vidya because the teacher is Prajapati or Brahmaji. It is also called the Turiya Vidya. The 2nd chapter of the Panchadashi, we have studied the 7th chapter, Tripti Deepa Prakaranam. And we know that the Tripti Deepa Prakaranam is 298 verses elaborating one mantra of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Atmanam Ched Vijaniyat Ayam Asmiti Purusha Kimichan Kasya Kamaya Shariram Anuswam Jure. We know that. Just like that, and we enjoyed that. The whole of the second chapter of the, not whole of, a good part of the second chapter of Panchadashi is an analysis. It is 109 verses explaining this mantra. Sadeva Saumya Idamagram Asid Ekam Eva Dvitiyam. Sad Eva. Not Saumya. Saumya means one, dear one, my dear student. Asid Ekam Eva. And each of this is very elaborately explained. And of course, clubbed with the explanation of Swamiji, it is a pure delight to understand what is Brahman as existence. That is the 6th chapter. Of course, you have the Tattvamasi Mahavakya in that chapter. We come now to Chandogya, 7th chapter, where Narada is the student. Narada comes to his cousin brother, Sanat Kumara, both Manasa Putras of Brahmaji. And he says, I have all the knowledge in the world. I have studied all the Vedas, everything that there is to be studied. And yet, there is a sense of incompletion. There is a sense of apurnatvam. Something is empty. Rajaji, Sri C. Rajagopal Achari, the Governor General of India, has composed a very beautiful Tamil composition called Korai Undrum Ille. There is no hang-ups, no incompletion whatsoever. And this has been rendered by M.S. Subbalakshmi, a very famous song many people know. Now, all of us have some korai or the other, some way incomplete. Now, this is the same question that Sanat Kumara had. I have everything, but there is a feeling of incompletion. What is that? And Sanat Kumara, who is an avatara of Lord Subramanya. Whenever I go to the temple of Lord Subramanya, I see him as Brahma Vidya Acharya, who has given us Bhuma Vidya. He tells his younger brother, and through him to all of us, Yo vai Bhuma Tat Sukham. Only the infinite can give you happiness. Na alpe sukham asti. That means other than in the finite world, there is no question of happiness. Bhumaiva sukham. Bhuma, all you have to do is to understand what is this infinity that you are. In the Kenopanishad, we went from the object to the subject. And we discovered I am that subject who's there and what is my nature. In the Kenopanishad, we saw them as a subject. And in the Brahma Vidya, Brahma Vid Apnoti Param, in the Taittiriya Upanishad, 2nd chapter, Brahmananda Valli, we understood that as Brahmavid Apnoti Param, Tadeva Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. So, what is my true nature? I am of the nature of Anantat Chit, Anantat Sat. I am limitlessly conscious, limitlessly existent. Now, right now, I am seeing this world around me. I am a limited consciousness. But my reality is I'm limitlessly conscious, limitlessly existent. And this is what he wants Narada to know. And this is he wants all of us to know. And then he elaborates. Yatra na anyat pashyati. That in which one sees nothing else. Na anyat shrunoti. When you hear nothing other than Brahman. Na anyat vijanayati. That means you see only Brahman sa bhuma. But on the other hand, atha yatra anyat pashyati, but if you see or hear or know something else, that is alpam. And it is only in bhuma that you have amritam. And in alpam, you have mrita. Now what happens? Let us all have our own experience of deep sleep. In deep sleep, because my mind has enfolded, there are absolutely no problems. More important, I have no limits. There is no limit in time. There is no limit in space. I experience no limitations whatsoever. The moment I wake up, what wakes up is my body, my mind and sense organs wakes up, and then I become suddenly aware of time. Where am I? Aware of space. Identification with the body happens, and all the limitations come. Now, in Bhuma Vidya, we understand even though I wake up to an experience of limitation, this experience of limitation is because of the limited body mind. But I, the Atma, remember the Pramata, the knower, that feeling of limitations is because of the body and mind. My real nature is limitless. Although I experience duality, ya anyat pashyati, nanyat shrunoti, nanyat vijanati. I see differences, but I do not differentiate because I have got Brahma Vidya. This is waking up. And this is what Swami Vivekananda told us from that famous mantra of Kathopanishad, Uttishtata Jagrata. Wake up, get up, Prapya Varan Nibodhata. That this is the clarion call of all the Upanishads for us to wake up, open your eyes to a new understanding. I am not this limited body mind. Even though my experience is limitations, it is because of my body mind. The real me has no limitations whatsoever. I have been there from the very beginning. I will be there till the very end. Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha.
Thank you, Hegde sir, and all speakers of the day for a wonderful session. Thank you all, friends, for your active participation in this divine journey. On coming Monday, 6th May, let us tune in for Gift 25 session. Let us conclude the session with Shanti Mantra. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnabadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om. Thank you.